Diary of a Man in Despair. Friedrich Reck. October 9, 1944.
Herr Giesler has dreamed up a new surveillance technique. Housing commissions have now made their appearance in every town and village, empowered to enter and search any house at any hour of the day or night, to commandeer living space. Since they also have been put in charge of labor allocation, they can, at their own sweet will, force any woman whom they decide is not committed to perform voluntary labor. This is what happened at our house, like a bolt from the blue, without prior announcement of any kind, without knocking or ringing the bell. There appeared in the living room the little dictator who was assigned to our quiet village a week ago, and who has spent the time since in a fruitless attempt to root out "God be praised" as a greeting form among the farmers. Along with 2 other rooms, he took over my library, accompanying this with the amiable promise that a woman with at least 3 children would be quartered in each room, and to accommodate the horde, holes would be drilled in the Gothic walls and floors. I was ordered to move my library, including irreplaceable first editions, prints, and hand-copied manuscripts, down to the cellar where they could be quietly devoured by the mice. Don't get worked up, there are lots of book collections going down the drain. Why not yours? His eyes as he said this glistened with meanness. The one-time tax clerk was swollen to the size of a Napoleon in the consciousness of his own power. I can remember that during the First World War, the occupants of a dugout fed their stove with first editions and priceless manuscripts from the castle of Mezethen at Leven. But this was a simple case of soldiers in need, a simple reaching out after the first thing available. There was no spiteful feeling in it. But what was happening here was something else. To begin with, in the case of this subordinate bureaucrat, there was the resentment of the educated man, the resentment of everything that was more than he was, and the feeling that now, finally, his chance had come, the long-awaited chance to revenge himself on a higher caste man. But there was something else involved, the canaille's hatred for all that is of the spirit. It was this hatred which allowed the German bourgeoisie in the middle of the 19th century to throw away everything that was best from their own past, an act unprecedented in its cynicism. There was much to be done in the days that followed. At Traunstein, an army officer had warned me, Herr Buchner had me on his list for my "God be praised" greeting. This, plus his statement, widely reported, that I had been involved in the attempted assassination on July 20th, made it imperative that I at once find bombed out people who shared my ideas, who would not try to spy out the radio stations we listened to, and who were not denouncers. We took in a couple, upholsterers from Munich, whom I knew to be dependable, and then a bombed-out artist was recommended to me, an American who had thus far gone on living undisturbed in Munich, and who, incidentally, turned out to be a tremendously good fellow. All this took a vast amount of time, since a man is on no account supposed to be able to choose who is to stay in his house, and therefore there were endless trips to Munich, in filthy, overcrowded trains, and interminable waits in the anterooms of Nazi functionaries, having to listen to the giggles of the well-tended females in all the surrounding offices, repellent types, whose distinguishing features are the permanent hairdo falling over the shoulder, the never-ending consumption of questionable ice cream and still more questionable biscuits, and the tyrannizing of the public. Thus, while immense convulsions shake Nazism at every point, I am enmeshed in a life in which there are times when I do not know whether my house still belongs to me or not. And yet, paradoxically, I am also getting deep insights into this whole tottering structure as I go about it. My pilgrimage took me to the headquarters of the so-called Gauleiter, which is just exactly what one imagines a Nazi office to be like, complete with executive officers who were office managers before they began impersonating Genghis Khan, and a smell in the air of secret fear, concealed behind a facade of coarseness and brutality, or else transformed into a reaching after sympathy. On the other hand, there is the Gestapo, which I entered with the help of an appropriate letter, and which looks very different from what one imagines: quiet, dignified offices, courteous subordinates, and a responsible officer, a councillor Gade, a polite and tactful young man who asked leave to finish his cigar, and was, generally, the very model of a man of breeding and poise. The Gestapo's greeting is "God be praised," while at the district office one is almost deafened with the bellowed "Heil Hitler." When I described the perspective posed for me by the Gauleiter's underling of having to live under the threat of having my house searched at any time, the Gestapo official actually indicated that the element of force standing behind such threat, which could only mean the Nazi Party, must certainly come to an end in 14 days or 3 weeks. Strange atmosphere, compounded of fear, of resignation, and of a last, bellowing madness, which is to culminate now in Germany's turning itself into a heap of rubble in honor of the great Manitou, strange atmosphere, diseased with the microbes of the end of the world. Imagine, however, that these termites, morning and evening clinging to the trams like grapes, imagine that they go on, headless as they have been made by the destruction of the intelligentsia, that they go on functioning. The air is so charged with tension that tomorrow, at any moment, lightning may flash. Except for those hardy souls who continue to down their daily portion of Nazi optimism, people know this, and are deeply resentful. Their resentment emerges in the disputes which are constantly taking place, at post office windows, on trams, on these stupid queues waiting to procure what now goes under the name of newspapers. Nerves are rubbed raw, and at any moment an argument may break out, followed by hand-to-hand grappling. I saw a 16-year-old female waiting to get on a tram slap a rather helpless old man because he was getting out too slowly. The sweet young thing was extremely astonished when I returned the compliment to her twofold, in the face, incidentally, to the protesting murmurs of the canal. I never before saw such things here. The way people dealt with each other under the Munich Revolutionary Republic was a model of politeness compared to what there will be after Hitler. Munich, defiled and distorted as it is, devastated like all the other cities, by the Prussian locusts, has a strange look to me now, as though, walking in it, I were in Chicago. Oh, it is dreadful to wander among the ruins of a city which only yesterday was like a good-humored mother. As I rode down one street, a house collapsed in an immense cloud of dust, covering the trolley tracks we had just passed with a pile of rubble 5 meters high. As I write, I can smell the stench of decaying bodies, because under the ruins are the corpses of 17 bank employees who were buried by the rubble. In pious commemoration, and to mark the place where these poor devils were drowned when a river of human excreta suddenly flooded out at them from the broken sewers, the survivors have placed a cross on top of the rubble heap, and the rats, grown plump with much gorging on corpses, rustle undisturbed over ruins and cross. There are no telephone lines still in working order, and there is no service window without its lines of people waiting for hours alongside, nor is there a store with anything for sale, or a roof into which the rain does not come. And through it all, this herd of troglodytes goes on, brainless and animal, morning and evening charging into the restaurants after ration-free food like the apes at the zoo after they have been kept waiting for the noon feeding. They gulp down their chemical beer, believe every bit of propaganda larded out to them, and are basically responsible for the fact that 12 years could pass during which we have been ruled by a maniac. Is it not the absolute height of tragedy, simply inconceivable shame, that just those Germans who are left of the best of them, who have been prisoners of this herd of evil-tempered apes for 12 years, should wish and pray for the defeat of their own country, for the sake of that same country,